Mulakat is being initiated by Prabha Khaitan Foundation and JayshreePeriwal Foundation, which brings prominent personalities to interact with some selective guests of Jaipur. I would now like to call Ms. Apra Kuchal, Honorary Convener, Prabha Khaitan Foundation, Rajasthan Affairs, to give the welcome note.
Thank you, Akriti. What a wonderful evening, and first and foremost, thank you so very much for turning here in large numbers on a very, very short notice. We really appreciate it. It calls for a huge round of applause, actually. And of course, who would not, accept the fact that, he is so popular in our city, in our state, that everybody wanted to be here to be a part of this evening. SanjoyKRoy, who doesn't know this name, he's brought such a lot of popularity, he has brought such a lot of knowledge, I would say, wisdom, in terms of everything that encompasses literature, text, authors, publishers to our city. He's brought Jaipur to on the world map. And I think Jaipur Literature Festival is Kumbh of our India. Absolutely, Kumbh of Sahitya. Thank you so very much, Sanjoy, for being here. And we know that he's the managing director for Teamworks, and he's produced so many films, so many shows. And yes, every year he brings a lot of tourism also to our state. Thank you, Sanjoy. And we have JayshreePeriwal, who's the chairperson of JayshreePeriwal Group of Institutes. She's a visionary. She's also done amazing work in the field of education, and she has turned this state into a state where literacy plays a very important role, and she, being a woman, has proved that nothing is impossible when a woman thinks that she can do it. Thank you so very much, both of you, visionaries in their field.
Before we begin the session, I'd just like to take a second to request everyone to please put their phones on silent or switch off. Thank you so much.
Hi, Sanjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing is worthwhile. It's never achieved without the tufan, the junoon, the divangi, and here is a man who embodies all the three. SanjoyKRoy, the man dedicated to art in a world that is excited only about technology. SanjoyKRoy, a man who selflessly purveys beauty in a world that is so selfish to the core. SanjoyKRoy, who truly believes that art means change. Pablo Picasso once said, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. Which makes me think that Sanjoy has remained a child despite silver mane that has become a style icon for everybody here. Thank you, Sanjoy, for putting Jaipur on the world's literary map and the 8th wonder of the world, JLF. It has been a pleasure to have been a privy to your thoughts and dreams as your friend. Let's begin. What we see today is the flourishing teamworks, the festivals, what you're doing today, but somewhere you must have sown the tiny seed and now it has blossomed. Tell us about your original filmmaking, TV serials, Tol Mol Ke Bol, Newsline that you initially began, and the Edinburgh Festival where you met late John Singh and Faith, and your entire journey. Let's hear it.
Thank you very much. Jayshree, and thank you, Sandeep and Apra. And I'm sorry that all of you were given this last-minute notice. Entirely my fault. When Sandeep called me and said, "Can we do this?" I'd first say yes, then I'd say no. Then I said yes, then I cancelled again because I knew that my 2 days in Jaipur prior to the festival is so fraught with the politics of everything that we get involved that I wasn't sure that I would be able to take out time. I said no to Ashoka Club a little while ago, But thank you for all coming together, and thank you, Jayshree, for, at the end when Sandeep said there's a waiting line, I said, it's not for me, it's for Jayshree. People come to see Jayshree. they need their kids and grandkids to be admitted. It's okay, let's accept some basic reality here. But you know, you asked me a very long question, and I'm going to try and answer it. I don't know whether you all know, so Harvard Business School teaches a case study about teamwork in the Jaipur Literature Festival and how it's become one of the fastest growing cultural brands in the world. And one year, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was able to go and sit in on a class that they were doing for the summer program, where much of the people there were CEOs and chief executives of company, sort of discussing how we had created what we had created, and you know, how we did what we did. And I was amazed because people were like, teamwork has this 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 15-year vision. This is how they decided to take over the world, this is how their brand, whatever. And at the end, Tarun Khanna, the dean, said, why don't you come and say a few words? And I said, you know, much of my journey has been an accident. And it's not necessarily that this is what I set out to do, but this is what the circumstances made possible. So to answer your, you know, I've always been interested in theatre and the arts. When I was at Bombay in Cathedral, I was in theatre when I came to university in Delhi.
St. Stephen's.
I was part of, we created a theatre company. I used to spend much of my time actually protesting. They used to call me a Naxalite. I used to be in jail a lot of the time. My father, who was then the Commander-in-Chief of the Eastern Naval Command, used to fly and get bail and then take me out, say, you have a bath, wash up, here's a sandwich, and then drop me back to the police station because then I have to protest for something else. But it was on one of those occasions, so in the first year I never went to any of my classes. And at the end of the first year, I got a message from Vijay Tankha, some of you will know. Vijay, Dr. Manmohan Singh's son, now son-in-law. And Tank sent me a message saying that, don't you need attendance? And I was like, attendance? I mean, why would I need attendance? I'm going to drop out of university and I'm going to go and work in the villages. My elder brother, who was in Delhi School of Economics at that time, he came to me one day and he said, you know, you have all of these grandiose plans of working in a village. Please remember, in a village there's no air conditioning, and the only bombs that you'll be throwing is from an air-conditioned limousine. That's the reality of it. So I'm going, okay, maybe I should rethink this. And Tank's idea was that he wanted me to do a film that he was directing and producing. And he said, if you do the film, I will give you attendance. Which is how in university, then I started working in film. And then I joined Theatre Action Group. I started running TAG pretty much while I was in university, etc., which was Barry John's. He was the creative director, I was the admin director of the group. And I met my wife, Punita, who works very closely with Jayshree, and Jayshree literally funds much of the program that we do, which is the outreach program. And Punita and I met when we were in TAG, and at some point of time, she was like, we have to get married. And I was like, marriage? What is that? Let's have a party. But anyway, once we decided and agreed that that's what was going to happen, my father-in-law asked me, so what do you do? So I said, I do theatre. So he said, no, I mean, what's your day job? I'm going, no, I mean, I do theatre. I run a theatre company. So he said, that's not good enough, young man, and you know, you better go and find a job. So 6 months later, as the wedding date was coming closer, again he said, so young man, what do you do? Have you got a job? And I'm saying, no, I mean, you know, I earn 1,000 rupees, which I pay myself, and that's my job. He said, but how are you going to support my daughter? And I'm saying, but where did that come from? Our agreement is that she's the manager of a big company. She's supposed to be supporting me, I'm the artist. What is this nonsense about me having to get a job? But anyway, as it happened in those, in the mid-90s, Doordarshan had just opened up, as many of you may know. And they started giving out time to private companies and so on and so forth. And Bobby Bedi, who went on to produce in which Annie gives it those ones, which was Arundhati Roy's first film, and The Rising and Bandit Queen, etc. He had been coming to me because there were no television professional or film professionals in that sense at that time. So they used to come to theatres to say, can you do something? And I used to say, television? No way am I going to join the electronic media. I'm a theatre person. But anyway, as the wedding approached, I sort of said, okay, I might as well take this job. And I started directing for Bobby. I forget what the name of the first series was. It was a kids series on, it was called Telefun. It was like Telematch, and it was on Doordarshan. And then from there on, then, you know, we set up Teamwork roughly 30 years ago. It was first Tag TV in 1987 and then Teamwork in 1989. And as they say, the rest is history. And from 1989 to about 1995, 96, all we did was television and film. So by about 1995, 96, we had about 14 or 15 daily soap operas or food shows or talk programs or puppet shows, theatre shows, etc. And I remember we'd become again a huge factory. So every Saturday we used to have something called the Saturday afternoon meeting, SAM, where all our producer colleagues and all the directors of the show used to sit around in a meeting talking about what is next week's problem, which actor had to be written out because they'd run away or gone and slept with somebody or created a huge hangama. So who had to be written out of the scene? And two of my colleagues, Sharupa, who you know, and Manika, who's still a dear friend, walked in and said, we are brain dead, we can't do this anymore. And I'm like, okay, if we don't want to do this and we're all brain dead, so let's not do this and go back to our origins, which was the arts. And that was easier said than done because we were so used to making money, or notional money. You made notional money on television because you paid for everything. It's not that the channels paid you. You invested, you paid, you created the program, you gave it to the channel. Maybe after 140 days the channels used to pay you. So it was really notional money. But we were still making it. And many of our shows in those days, if you remember, there was no season. So if a show was successful, it ran forever, every week or every day, every year, year on year. So shows like Tol Mol Ke Bol, which was the first sort of moving forces in game show in television, they've been running for 6 or 7 years, Chuna Laga Ke, Newsline, etc. So when we said we're going to stop, I mean, maybe in hindsight it was a foolish decision because the channels were like, this is what makes us money. So there's no way you're going to stop this, and if you stop this, we're not going to give you the money that we owe. So we nearly went bankrupt. It took us about 6 or 7 months to wind down all our shows. From 120 people, etc. We started, you know, we had to retrench people, people started leaving. And meanwhile, what had happened is something called Friends of Music. My partner Mohit Satyanand and his sister Kanika and Valentine Shipley, who was a musician, had set up something called Friends of Music, which was a platform where we said, anything that's not Bollywood and anything that's not rock. So all the world music that you see today, so Indian Ocean and Mrigya and Orange Street and Silk Route, all emerged out of the Friends of Music platform. And because it was so successful, we said, okay, let's commission new writing in theatre, which is specific, which is in English, but very specific to the Indian Maloo. So we had Lilette, we commissioned Lilette and Mahesh Patani, etc. to write new plays. Some of them were very successful and lots of people, and some of them were really horrible but won lots of awards. And everybody was very happy with it except me, which I thought was really horrible in theatre. And we did the same in dance with Aditi Mangaldas and Asta Debu and Daksha Seth. And meanwhile, in 1996, what happened is that my wife Punita had an accident. We were in Goa on a holiday, and it was this bizarre accident, and she had hemorrhaged and she had a big brain thing. So it took a while to get better. And I hadn't cut my hair. And one day my eldest son, our eldest son Aditya, came to me and said, are you planning to grow your hair? So I said, why? So he said, if you grow your hair, you're not coming to my school. So I said, yes! No more parent-teacher meeting, no more annual day, no more sports day. And my hair has always been kind of more salt than pepper, so everybody around used to think, you know, internationally when I used to go, oh my God, see, he speaks our language, he has long hair, must be creative, you know, he speaks in a way that we understand. So I ticked all the boxes, person of color, you know, maybe he is intelligent. So I used to get to go and lecture in, you know, Warwick and LSE and King's College and Goldsmith, etc. and created a network, and also got to see that in all of these platforms, all of these amazing festivals internationally, where you saw some of the most incredible performances, there was no presence from India. And if there was a presence from India, it was the worst kind. Meaning, you know, some ICCR, somebody had sent it. Sandeep will know that we met in many of these trust boards there, etc. And I was very keen that we create something of quality. So in 2001, we set up the first platform of performances at the Edinburgh Festival, but not just at the Edinburgh International Festival, but at the Fringe, at the Tattoo, at the Film Festival, at the Literature Festival, and presented India like it had never been presented before. And as they say, ek baar wo safed chhaap lag jata hai na, then the rest is history. So Singapore had invested just then $1.3 billion into Singapore's arts infrastructure. They created Esplanade and all of the other places around. And they then invited us to come and set up shop in Singapore. And I remember the minister saying to me, Jayshree, you'll love this. So the minister, when he inaugurated the office, said, so Mr. Roy, in 10 years' time, what is the vision? Will all of Singapore play the violin? So I looked at him like, this guy is completely nuts. So I said, well, you know, some people will play the violin, some people will play the piano, some people will play football, and some people will do none of the above. So he wasn't a happy bunny, because in Singapore everybody has to do everything. And our deal with the Singapore government, I said, we will only set up if you ensure that you lift censorship. And that was a big deal. And our first film festival that we did in Singapore, I mean, Singapore I think had pledged $5 million to us for a 5-year period to be able to, you know, bring them up to speed or whatever. And the first film festival that we did then was the Asia Festival of First Films. And they allowed us to show LGBTQ, bestiality, drugs, everything that was anathema to Singapore. And our thing was, if you don't allow people to think, which is very much coming back to, you know, what you do in your school, if you don't allow people to think, how will you get them to think out of the box? How will you become creative? How will you do business? Business is not about a transactional activity. It's about learning about a culture, about a way of life, about a way. You all know what it is like to be able to crack that code. You can only crack that code and become a successful business person if you know the society, the culture, the tradition, the way of doing work with another people. And that's what the arts does. It creates that window into another world, which I think is so very important. So that roughly, in a nutshell, is the story.
You know, your name and fame is growing with your mane. So, on a very serious note, you think there's a connection?
You know, like I said, in the early 90s, when people started looking at me, not necessarily for who I was, but because of my hair, and I keep saying, it's my hair is the USP, that's the marketing of it. And there's a big study that's been done, and there's a paper that's been published just for the record about the hair being the marketing tool in this particular case.
So your theatre action group, with Barry John, and I've been under his tutelage as much, under where I didn't see you. Another thing, Sanjoy, tell me, you know, on 26th of January, Ambedkar gave us our constitution. And somewhere around the same time, SanjoyKRoy gives us the constitution for literacy, for literature, for art. You gave us this pulsating, throbbing art festival, and you did it with so much of aplomb. we've heard about your trials and tribulations. You tell us something that enthralled you, and what were your peak moments that you felt joyous, you felt accomplished. And I wonder how you dream, what you dream, and then you make that dream into reality. It's amazing.
You know, as you all know, when John and Faith came to Edinburgh in 2001 to see what we were doing at the Edinburgh Festival, 2002, it was the second year I think they came. And John, as you know, had already started working in a big way in creating the association in trying to restore old buildings, the museum that they did at the Gate in Old City of Amir, etc. And when they came to Edinburgh, they a home or castle or whatever was being used as a transformative space for the arts, and people realized the value of that, and they weren't tearing it down to build a mall or an office or whatever, but using it to be able to create that value along the Royal Mile. He was like, this is what Jaipur needs. I had not necessarily had any association with Jaipur prior to that. I mean, I remember coming one year, and Faith being Faith, we immediately got into an argument, I think on minute 1, and Faith walked around and said, you're going to give me a heart attack, and I said, well, you need one if this is the way you're going to be behaving, and stuff like that. And what was incredible was Faith and John were so impassioned about their love for the city. And while we were very clear that we didn't want to run the Jaipur Virasat Festival, we were happy to advise from a distance, because I was like, Jaipur, who understands Jaipur? Jaipur lives in many centuries at the same time. The palace intrigues and the politics of the city and the entrenched society that you all are. I said, somebody needs to spend a lifetime, maybe they'll understand Jaipur, and you know, there's no way we can do that. And in many ways, I think that's the success, Jayshree, that we come like a spaceship. We're not necessarily engaged with your daily pulls and pressures, etc. We land, we do our thing, and we go away. And our stake in the city is really about investing in creating a bottom-up movement where education, knowledge, the ability to be able to make it transformative is so huge. Today, looking back 12 years ago, if we had done a dipstick survey, or if my board had said, you know, what's the guarantee that you will give us that this will succeed, I think everybody would have laughed us out of heart and home if I said I'm picking Jaipur for a destination for a literature festival. But you know, my intrinsic belief continues to be that be it a Kanpur or a Udaipur or a Ajmer, whichever parts of the world that Sandeep has now decided to take over and plant the flag of literature, everybody, every society has people wanting that, who are hungry for information. And for us, because in a sense we had inherited what was seen as a very white, very elite festival. And I remember when we started, I was very clear, and we had many discussions with my colleagues and with Namita and with William. And I said, there are 3 things that I want us to do, which will show that we are successful. 1, that we will not reserve any seats for the good and the great.
Yeah, and we see that happening.
2, make it a festival for the city, where everybody from the Moongfali wala to the rickshaw driver to the jukti wala is involved in some way. And 3, give back and make sure that the festival is for young people and not necessarily for people like you and me. And it's amazing that I think 3 or 4 years into the festival, maybe some of you have heard me tell the story. I remember the first time we put into place security in Dighi. I was standing at the Gol Chakra, as I do every morning, for an hour to receive people. And this man and this boy walked through the door, the Dighi Haveli gate. And because I was standing there, I saw them being stopped, and I said, "Bhaiya, kya baat hai?" And the gentleman said, "Main SMS hospital ke footpath pe sota hu. I sleep on the pavement of the SMS hospital. And I know that I'll never be able to send my son to school, nor afford to buy him a book. But I thought if he had heard a story, it will change his life forever. And I'm so sorry I've come here." And you all know this way more than I do. For somebody like that to have the guts and think that he can step through the gate of a palace Haveli is transformative. Last year, this one gentleman who I met 5 years ago comes from a village 40 kilometers from Gorakhpur. And 5 years ago when I met him, very tall, good-looking guy, big turban, he said, you know, he used to be a principal of a village school in this village 40 kilometers away. He said, I used to follow everything about the festival, which is the reason I came. And when he came back to meet me, he said he had gone back, set up a book club, Sandeep, in his village. Last year when he came back with 8 or 12 other villagers. They've set up 6 book clubs in villages in and around. That is change. That is when you know that you're going to be influencing change. And as far as young people, you know that, how many of your young people have been part of that?
Absolutely.
This year, the youngest kid who's going to release a book at the festival, starting tomorrow or day after, is at the age of 10. He's been coming to the festival for 5 years and has written a book. Yesterday at Kanoria College for women, I released a book of a young lad, 7 years old. And I thought I'd been ambushed because I was asked to give away an award, and instead I started reading this book. So I was a little irritated that I hadn't been told. And then I looked at this book. I have never seen such a beautifully produced, illustrated, written book. And I couldn't believe that he had written it. And I said to the mother, I was like, you know, somebody, they must have got a wealthy family, they must have got somebody to write it. And then she brought this boy's diary in which he had written the book. I was astonished. And there again, look at the change. That at 7 years, 10 years, 13-year-old kids, not necessarily immersed in their phones or video games or television, but have that kind of attention. And it takes huge attention to write, as many of you know. You know, writing a 200-word article is a problem, let alone a 30,000-word book. Has that dedicated attention in the middle of being a child to write. And that is the success of the festival.
I have to confess, you know, I just ring up Sanjoy and I say, this student of mine, he's only in grade 10 and that's the second book that he's written. The mom is here. Mrs. Jagar, can you say hello to us? Thank you. And he promptly said, send me the book and we are going to get it published. I have another mom here whose daughter is only in grade 4. Shreya, can you say hello to us? And she's coming to the Litka Book of World Records, in the Guinness Book of World Records, and she's written a book as much, and she's writing another one, and I'm going to bring her to you next year.
Sure.
And I've seen his compassion with children. I don't know how many of you know that Salam Balak Trust in Delhi, he began with 30 children and now he has 10,000 children. They're orphans, they're from the streets who are abandoned and left. And he looks after them, cares for them. He believes in alternative education, that everybody does not need to do math and science and go to schools. They can go to schools where there is arts and there is creativity. I've seen that, I've felt it. And the whole Jaipur, the whole world is understanding how arts is so important. Look at the kind of revenue that is being generated. GLF, I think last year, the revenue was over 30 crores. Though the Edinburgh Festival, that's 3,000 crores. And I think Sanjoy has it in him and Jaipur has it in it, that we will one day reach somewhere there. If not at par, I'm sure better and bigger. And we're all hoping for that, Sanjoy. And you spoke something about the ship coming forward. Yes, whenever the JLF ship comes, along with it, the waves bring in the controversies. Be it the Salman Rushdie or the Taslima, there is something that's always, there is a storm. And I want to really ask all of us sitting here, when will we all mature and look at the major benefits of deliberation, of debate, of respecting one another's opinions rather than getting into the minor controversies and making a mess of what we shouldn't. I don't know how you handle all of that, balancing it, and storming through the wind, sailing through the rough weather, and then emerging so triumphant. Tell us something how you manage all this, because every year there is an uproar.
You know, the problem with the controversies is that it's distracting, and much of the controversy, as all of you know, is political in nature, mostly created outside of the ambit of literature, and distracts from the hundreds of incredible writers and speakers whose work should be talked about. And year on year, because we have such a large number of press that comes from the world, I mean, this year 1,000 press people wanted accreditation. We've sort of halved it. I think about 600 odd have been given accreditation from across the world and India. But it also therefore becomes a great platform for somebody to want to make a statement or want to make a particular kind of noise. One thing that it did teach me, and you know, it's a learning and it's a sharing, and before I do that, I just wanted to add to what you said. You know, about 4 or 5 years when we did the first economic survey in Jaipur about the contribution to the festival, that's when it was 30 crores. Last year, when Ernst & Young did a basic survey, and they did jewelry, furniture, clothing, home products, hotels, restaurants, it was about 116 crores.
Can we hear it? This is what Jaipur gets back. Thank you.
The bookstore alone sells 100,000 books, which is about 1 crore worth of books each year, which is more than 5 bookstores sell in a city in a month. So, you know, there is a whatever. But coming back to, you know, controversy, the one thing, during the Salman Rushdie time, you know, it's very easy for us to say those people, and, you know, we shouldn't have done this. When we went,
see, you can hear the firecrackers, na? Can you all hear?
It's
already Sanjoy is here, GLF is knocking, and there are fireworks.
As long as they're not shooting at us, it's okay. One of the things, you know, we finally, because we were getting nowhere, and there were these 21 Muslim organizations who were protesting Salman Rushdie's appearance at the festival. I had said to government that I want to do a meeting with them. And government kept saying, no, don't, because they are like this, they are like that, etc. We finally brokered a meeting, and we went to a somewhat strange hotel, and all 21 organizations were there. 19 of those 21 organizations agreed to our point of view, agreed to disagree, because we said that today, if you put pressure on us to rescind an invitation to the speaker, tomorrow somebody will put pressure on us to rescind an invitation of somebody from your community, and therefore we will not rescind the invitation. And they agreed. The 4 other organizations said the usual, maar denge, kaat denge, bake denge, bomb taking, you know, all of the usual. But what it did certainly to me is that much as I think I'm a liberal, long hair, you know, all of the blah blah stuff, and we think we're empathetic to the minorities as we should be, our world and their world never ever intersects. I had no idea about their trials and tribulations, about their travails, their problems, their issues. Of course we have friends across all religious divides, but these are people who come from a completely different space, a completely different environment. And what it taught me was not to take for granted that people like us had a solution. And we were in such a difficult space because we were trying to protect the freedom of expression, meaning Salman Rushdie's right to come and speak or to write, which we will fight till the very end. But at the same time, we had a duty and a responsibility to protect the rights of a minority. In this case, it was a particular religion. Today, it could be a particular caste. Tomorrow, it could be a particular color. And this is true today. This fight today is true not just in India. We see it in Australia, where we have to fight for the rights of the Aboriginal writer. We have to fight for the Native American writer in the United States. We have to fight for the Inuit writer. We have to fight for the first nation writers in Canada. Any minority community today is marginalized. They do not sit on the same table as we do. They do not go to the same schools and colleges. They are not networked. For us today, if we get into trouble, I will pick up the phone, call him or call Sandeep or call Jayshree and say, please sort this out. They have no such access to anything that we think is normal and natural. I don't know whether you guys saw yesterday or the day before, it went around on WhatsApp, this video where this cop in UP is sitting with his hand behind his head and this old lady is crying and pleading for him to file an FIR for whatever had happened. And this guy was just not moved. The poor in our country, the segregated in our country, those without caste, the minorities have no chance whatsoever at all. At all. And I think this is why we need hundreds of Sandeep's initiatives, hundreds of literature festivals and platforms where writers and writing, irrespective of language, of caste and creed and religious divide, and for them to be able to come out and tell their story, share their point of view, make sure that we hear them and hear what they have to say, their struggles and tribulations. So yes, at the end of the day, yes, there's a controversy, yes, we have to work with the politics of it, and it doesn't matter which party is in power, believe you me. You know, we go through the same thing irrespective. The minute people are in power, from the lowly tehsildar or the SHO, all the way to the highest politician, it's the same. And the problem is not them. The problem is us. Because we don't call them out. We elect them. We put them into the power. It's our taxes that pay for them. And we do not call them out. At the end of a CII, the last CII conference last year, long hair, I got invited to do the closing, and I sort of called out all of the industrialists there, and I said, guys, at the end of the day, you pay for every election, you pay for every political party, you pay for every politician to be elected, and unlike in America, you have zero influence. Zero influence even for your own industry. Zero influence. I said, it's bizarre. And everybody said to me, from Omkar, Kanwar to Tarun Das to whatever, how can we speak? People like you have to speak. I said, why? It's all our responsibility to speak, each one of us. If you're silent today, you're complicit. If you're silent today, look in the mirror. You're complicit. If whatever Pehlu thing is being linked, it is our collective responsibility. Not somebody else's, not that SHO, not whoever, not Vasundhara Rajesh, not whoever it is. It's our responsibility because we've been silent. And we are okay with that. What is that kind of society we're creating? Which is the reason why the arts and literature is important.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I go into this tirade.
We become wiser and we all promise to listen, reflect, ponder, deliberate, and not react, and certainly not react violently. We need to empathize and understand one another with differences of color, culture, surroundings, upbringing. It's important. Sanjoy, I've known you and Punita for the last 10 years. And you know, I've seen Punita very steadfast in her Yuva Ekta Manch. You know, the Literature Festival has grown bigger, brighter, glamorous, but she is so committed to her foundation. And every year for almost a fortnight, she spends time with the slum children along with the mainstream schools. And of course, my school is a part of all this as much. And I've seen how children are pulled into empathy and understanding one another, breaking boundaries, making a difference, believing in one another. Can I say, what kind of role has she played? Do you think she's the wind underneath your legs, or the force behind your success? How much of that would you want to share with Punita?
I don't know whether you guys have met my wife. So Punita and I met in theatre.
Maybe you've not met her. Even at the festival, she's there every minute, but she'll never come forward. She'll always be in the background. An amazing human being.
So Punita's older than me, and she threatened me we were supposed to get engaged the day that Indira Gandhi died. And I was like, my thing with her was like, you know, why can't we just live together? What is all this engagement and marriage? And her thing was, my parents will have a heart attack, so please, you know, you better get married. So in a sense, she's always been very forceful. She's also the healer in our family. So for many years when I didn't have any sense of, you know, meditation or, she used to be part of something called the Karmic Research Center, which looked at past life influences and so on and so forth. So the joke in the family with the kids and me was that if we do something wrong, she's going to turn us into cockroaches and rats and, you know, donkeys and stuff like that, so beware the mother. But she's been very much that. She's the boss of the family. I get to do the
and she has the liberty to say that and take permission from him.
Yeah. She's the boss, and I don't think, I mean, even the kids know that it's irrelevant what I say to them. If mama says yes or no, then that's the big thing. And and I think the difference is that I tend to paint the big strokes and, you know, do the bhashan baji and all of this kind of stuff. Punita works at the micro level, so she works with children on the other side of the law. She works in remand homes in Delhi, really transforming lives one at a time, making sure that these kids who've been in jail or in prisons or in these remand homes, which are like prisons, have an opportunity when they leave, have an opportunity to get back into society. And this really came from a time when I remember both she and I, you know, when our kids were born 32, 33 years ago, whenever, we used to know that they could get anything that they wanted. And yet when we drove through the streets of Delhi or any other city, there were other kids on crossroads and street lights and traffic lights who we knew had nothing. And we always thought, I mean, I certainly felt that we had a responsibility to ensure that every kid could afford what our kids do. And I think if all of us have that collective responsibility, you will have far less poverty, you will have greater education and empowerment.
And real education.
And that's what we've always been taught. You know, my parents, my grandparents in our homes, they've always been people who've been adopted by them, funded by them to go to school. Many of the time, of course, the house help stole so that they could also go off to America, but that's another story. But it's really been a responsibility, and we take that responsibility very seriously and to heart. And I think Punita does that in many ways more than perhaps I do.
I know Akriti's there, that we must open the house for questions. One last thing that I want to ask Sanjoy, there are a lot of Johris here sitting. I see Mr. Kasliwal here, but I truly believe कि जयपुर के जौहरी तो संजॉय हैं. He knows हीरो को कैसे ढूंढते हैं और कैसे तराशते हैं. He's doing that with children, he's doing that with youth, he's empowering each one of them. And आपको सलाम, it's been wonderful. Can we, you know what, when I look back and read history, the lawmakers, the kings of yesteryears spent a lot of time and money on arts and culture. Do you think you'll be able to influence the lawmakers, the policy makers, the government to take more initiative and fund more festivals so we can make a change in our economy? Somewhere we feel that it's the manufacturing industry which needs a boost, but I think it's the arts industry that needs the boost. It creates many more jobs.
So Jayshree, I want to put this into perspective. So the creative industry study, which is published every quarter, says that for every $1 million that's invested in industry, you create 9 to 11 jobs. For every $1 million you invest in the creative industries, you create 133 jobs. So that's first the comparison. If you look at places like London or New York, and you talked about Edinburgh a little while ago, London West End contributes, last year contributed 26 billion pounds of additional income to London's economy. Broadway contributed, I think, 33 or 35 billion dollars into New York's economy. If you look at India of the future, and we have to look at India of the future, the India of the future will rest in a coming together of design, of our incredible craft and heritage, and our ability to be able to deliver a service and market it. That is where the future of India's economy lies and Indian jobs lie. Whether it's in jewelry or textile or craft or fabrics or architecture or buildings or roads or glasses or bottles or pandals or whatever it is. Every way that we look around, we see design. Your textile, my coat, this carpet, his jacket, this chandelier, everything is about design, and it is the most underrated aspect ever. Rajasthan is one of the few states that I think understands it. They understand their culture, they understand the background, they understand the history, they understand stones, they understand the importance of design in textile, in furniture, in jewelry. Therefore, Rajasthan, as has happened in this last decade, has become the capital of the arts, at least for North India. Cultural capital of India. Coming to, can we influence policy? One of the interesting things that have happened, because as you know, the RSS looks at itself as an arts and educational institution, and everything that they do is to, how do we rule for 100 years through the hearts and minds? Very much as Macaulay said when he first travelled through the length and breadth of India. What did he say when he went back to the House of Lords? He said, I travelled through the length and breadth of India. I didn't meet a poor person. I don't know which India he travelled through, but anyway. And he said, unlike Africa, where we've been able to dominate through power, he said in India, they have a dominant culture, they have a dominant language, and the only way we'll be able to subjugate them is if they understand that our language and culture is superior to theirs. And therefore we have to ensure that education is the first point, and therefore the Cambridge Mission was commissioned to come into India, and you had places like the missionary schools and the St. Stephen's of the world. The RSS, having understood this, and this is their whole thing, today luckily even the other parties have realized the importance of the arts.
Are so important.
From earlier of just being this Dane kind of thing, yeah, arts, culture, Dane, they've realized that it is an aspect of governance. So, in fact, just before coming, Shashi Tharoor had a whole series of meetings on culture and the arts for the Congress manifesto that we were able to bring people together at FICCI for, and we've done that for a number of political parties.
You are a co-chair at FICCI. I'm
a co-chair there, but we've done it for a number of political parties, so absolutely. And I'll close with, sorry I'm taking time, but I'll close with an example. So when Trump came to power 2.5 years ago, the budget, he told the budget committee, the senators, that they will stop the budget for the National Endowment of the Arts, the NEA. The National Endowment of the Arts gets $115 million every year, the lowest amount of spend in any part of the world with culture. So a bunch of people in the arts in the United States, got 4 or 5 people from across the world. I got invited because of my long hair, primarily. And each of us were given 10 or 15 minutes.
Now he's bullying me with just because I made one comment on his head.
But it's true.
Now he's going on bullying me.
So we got 15 or 20 minutes and I said, listen, I need only 5 minutes. And I went and I said, senators, today your culture, which is Hollywood, has driven your business interests across the world. It's at the back of Bollywood that McDonald's and Coca-Cola and your arms and armaments have flown, and this is a fact, and everybody knows it, whether it's Santa Claus or whatever else. I said, today if you stop the funding to the arts and culture, the only culture that America will be known for is its gun culture.
Yeah.
And we forget the importance of what the arts means. Of course, they then allocated $120 million because of the kind of this thing that happened. And again, those were focus groups. Those were lobbying groups of people like the Koch brothers, etc., who got people together and said, we believe that the arts is so important, you know. And they
I hope the government wakes up, but at least we have Sanjoy and Sandeep here who are making a difference. Thank you to both of you. We leave it for some questions for the audience.